Hi guys, welcome back to Gryphon Studio. Okay, so this week I've been making some little kind of creepy courtyard gardens, and yeah, they're pretty cool, nice and autumnal and creepy and weird, and you guys like that, so this is what I'll be making. Let's crack on. Alright, so first things first, we need some XPS foam. This is 5mm thick, and as for measurements, it's 3 inches along there, 3 inches along here, and then 5 inches that way and 7 that way. Now I've got 3 here, but I'm going to use 2 for each planter, so I'll keep one aside for another one. I'm going to start by taking a Sharpie and just etching out along the edges of this shape the thickness of the wall for this garden planter kind of thing. And I'm really just eyeballing this. I didn't really take any measurements. It looks about 1 centimetre or so, and then you just kind of cut out that middle section, and you should have left over a frame, a very delicate frame, so be careful, of XPS foam, which will act as the kind of surrounding wall. As you can see here, this XPS foam frame fits nicely on this one here. Now the bottom piece is going to act as kind of the soil level, and we're just going to hot glue this frame down all the way around the edges, and that should give us the makings of a wall and a base. Now for walls, I'm just going to take an X-Acto knife and I'm going to etch in a brick pattern. Again, I'm just eyeballing this. You can take your time if you want to. It's probably better if you measure it out a little bit. But I just want to be kind of quick about this, so I used my X-Acto knife and sliced in some very thin slices. I reckon these are about 1 millimeter deep. And then you'll take a kind of beveling tool. My high-tech version here is a paintbrush handle, and I'm just going to deepen those cuts, and hopefully that'll give a really nice brick texture. And then if you want to add a little bit of texture again over the top of that, you can use an aluminium ball just to add a little bit of variation there. I also wanted some small bricks to go along the top of the wall in a different orientation to the other bricks, and I'm going to use the tumbling method to texture them. This is a really quick and easy way of doing it. It's a bit loud, so yeah, bear that in mind. And I'm just going to stick them down. You can use hot glue if you want. It probably would be quite a bit quicker than my method, but I'm going to use some acrylic craft glue or something from Poundland in the UK. I've never used this before, and it was a bit of an experiment. So yeah, it seemed to work pretty well though, and nice strong hold. It doesn't foam up, and it dries, sort of overnight sort of thing. So just spread it out nicely and then start applying the bricks. Okay, so this very 2D looking tree is from Woodland Scenics, and I still have a few of these lying around, and I figured I would use a few on this planter. These are really cool. They have, I think, an inner wire armature or something surrounded by a layer of fairly soft plastic, and you can bend and manipulate these things into different shapes and make them a little bit less 2D, a little bit more 3D, and yeah, they're really useful. So I think I'll use a few of these trees on this build. I'll undercoat them with a brown primer, and using the little attachment bit on the bottom, which would normally fit to the base of it, I'm going to poke some holes in the XPS so I know where the tree's going to go in the future. And then I'm just going to undercoat the whole thing in black paint and Mod Podge, so getting all those little cracks and crevices, make sure there's no exposed foam. Now that base layer of XPS foam is going to need a little bit of texture, so I'm just going to use sand and obviously PVA glue to stick that down. I'm using my super high-tech basing application method of a bit of cardboard box. I'm just going to pour it in there and then shuffle that sand around, get rid of the big rock, don't need that, and then that should help fill in all those areas and give it a little bit of texture, a little bit of ground coverage to the base, and just tap out the excess. For the dirt colour, I'm using Game Colour Earth, and I just tend to kind of splodge this on and then use a wet brush to smooth it all out and make the paint go a little bit further. Now, with my brick method, I tend to paint a few different bricks out in different colours, using various tans and browns, warm tones, a few cold tones as well, and lots of variation. Gives this kind of patchwork effect, but it looks a bit silly at the moment, but it tends to even out a lot once the grey overbrush goes on, which is what I'm doing here. As you can see, that patchwork effect on the brick has been really toned down with the grey, and it's kind of blended into the same sort of colour scheme, with a slight bit of variation in the stone colouring. And after that pretty heavy grey overbrush has completely dried, I'm just going to stipple on this black brown wash. This is the wash that I would use for all of my terrain, and anything that goes in a dungeon or that is outdoor in the wild. It tends to give stonework a pretty grimy look, which I really like. I'm also going to go over the soil and the dirt in this planter as well, just to give it a really kind of damp, creepy vibe maybe, and hopefully it will really sell the piece. Alright, so as you can see there, the trees have had a little bit of a brown primer on them, so I'm going to hit them with the same wash that I used on my brickwork and on the dirt, the soil in the planter. I wanted to create a little bit of visual interest in these planters, because at the moment they're just going to be kind of very naturey, very plant-based, trees, things like that. So I wanted to add a little bit of a man-made element to it, and for that I decided to make a small bird bath. So I went through my little tub of jewellery parts and I started assembling various beads together using a piece of styrene tube down the middle and plenty of super glue, and eventually assembled beads in the right order to make it look like a bird bath. I have to say that these jewellery craft bead, metallic craft beads are super useful. They're probably one of the best things I've ever bought in terms of crafting materials, and I've used them on so many things. They're just really good for making anything look kind of ornate and decorative. I've made candlesticks out of them as well, if you want to check out that video. They're just super useful, and as you can tell there, it's a really cool little bird bath. But there's a little hole in the top, so I need to fill that in. I'm going to use a little bit of UV resin for that, just smooth it out a little bit, and then add the Q-ring light. That should help smooth the whole area out, and then it's ready for painting. So I used a bronze for the main bird bath area, a kind of a concrete grey for the bottom, and I'm going to weather this bronze with some lilac oxide. As you can see here, cover the whole thing in it, nice and thick, and then you have to kind of, before it's dried, you need to dab off the excess with a little bit of kitchen towel or something, or a Q-tip or something. So there I've got the planter, and I've added some bushes with clump foliage. Didn't want to add too many, wanted it to look kind of a little bit, not dead, but dying maybe. And added a few bits of flowers here and there. I stuck with kind of blues and reds and purples, and mostly because for me those are less bright and less cheery, I guess, than yellows and whites, and hopefully give off the right vibe that I'm going for with this kind of a creepy courtyard feel. I wasn't sure whether I would add leaves to the trees. I think in the end I just settled on no leaves at all, because I wanted them to look like they were dying or dead. Alright, it's time to add some moss, so I'm going to use burnt grass and yellow grass fine turf from Woodland Scenics. I tend to mix these together on the bottom of a plastic cup with some PVA and tend to fold it in on itself. It's a little bit fiddly when you use the wrong end of the mixing tool, but there we go. Really you want to mix these into a kind of a paste sort of thing. I tend to mix these together most of the time these days because I think it gives a nice bit of colour variation and a bit more realistic texture to the moss. So once they're mixed together and in a kind of a nice little paste like this, you can just scrape bits off and start applying it to the bricks. You might notice that I also added a few little birch seed leaves, dead leaves on the ground, just to add a little bit more of a wintry or autumnal feel to it. And because I don't have any water droppers or anything like that, or pipettes, I'm using an irrigation syringe to add some scenic cement. I'm using Woodland scenic cement, but you can make your own. I'm just using the irrigation syringe to kind of flood or waterlog the bushes and things to really stiffen them up and give them a bit more durability. Alright, so there we go, all finished. Yeah, I'm really happy with these. I like adding nature to builds. I like putting moss on and trees and bushes and leaves and vines and stuff. So yeah, I think I'm really happy with these. Really useful for things like courtyards and just towns, I think, in general. Any sort of built up area where you've got this kind of garden space. Yeah, so I'm really quite happy with them. So that's it for this one, guys. I am on Instagram if you want to follow me on there, and also Facebook. I have recently set up a Patreon page, and I will put a link in the description. But anyone who wants to support the channel, the best way you can do that is through Patreon, and it is with my patrons I'll be able to afford more crafting materials, hopefully better videos and more content in general for you guys. And yeah, so that's what I've been up to lately, setting all that up, and hopefully I can get more videos out to you really soon. That's it for this one though. I'll see you again next time. Thanks for stopping by, and happy crafting.